welcome to the 7th webinar in this series. It's great to have you all here this evening, and thanks for your support to date. Up until now, the webinars have really focused on particular modes of practice and maybe challenges that are arising to that, and support that people can give to practitioners. But this evening, we're going to take the time just to focus on what are the actual needs for equine assisted services, in particular in Northern Ireland. Who's accessing it and why are they accessing it? And you're going to be joined by 3 practitioners who are going to give us a little insight into their work at the moment. We've got Diane Jones from Claddy Farm, Amy Robinson and Anne Brown from Learning in Harmony with Donkeys. So the 3 of you are very welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. All of these guys still have their own careers and have brought equine assisted services into their careers. I'm sort of summarising here, they'll go into much more depth than I will, but they've obviously identified a need that they feel equine assisted services could address, which is a gap in the work that they were doing, and they will talk a little bit as to how they've filled that gap by introducing equine assisted services to what they previously did. As many of you are aware, before we delve sort of any deeper into the needs that need addressed and that equine assisted services can address, it's really important, I think, that we take a moment just to reflect on the recent passing of Simone McCambridge. I know she would have been very well known to the majority of you on this call. Simone was and will continue to be, through the legacy she's left behind, a leading light in equine assisted learning in Northern Ireland. She was vital to us in One Equine Trust, and I know she's been hugely supportive to a number of practitioners throughout Northern Ireland. She was an astute businesswoman, passionate equestrian, and a very skilled and compassionate equine assisted learning practitioner. And Simone's drive for this work, together with her husband Charles, and her commitment, has had such a profound impact on so many within Northern Ireland, both as recipients and clients of services, and also as colleagues and fellow practitioners working with her. I know I speak for our board when we say that One Equine is committed to continuing her legacy by working with all the practitioners in Northern Ireland and all the relevant bodies that we need to address the needs that Simone was really only too aware that needed addressed and could be addressed through equine assisted learning and on a wider basis equine assisted services. Obviously this doesn't remotely do her justice, but I think we can possibly not mention her this evening. She's been far too important to so many of us. But on that note, it seems a good time to introduce the 3 practitioners and have a little discussion from each of them as to the needs that they saw that they felt could be addressed, and no doubt were reflected in the work that Simone carried out as well. So Anne, I think if we start with you, if you want to give us a little bit of background on what you did prior to this and what drove you to become involved in equine assisted learning and what you're currently doing.
Okay, thank you very much, Molly. Good evening to everybody. Thanks for coming along to attend this presentation this evening with One Equine. My name is Anne Brown and I run a programme called Learning in Harmony with Donkeys. I'm from an educational background. I'm a primary school teacher and I currently teaching P2 and P3. So basically my journey started about 10 years ago as part of our extracurricular class in the afternoons during term time. Most teachers would do something of their interest. So that could have been badminton, it could have been knitting, it could have been tennis, but I decided to do Donkey Club. So I brought my little donkey Rosie with me to school every Wednesday, and Donkey Club was pretty much booked out for that term, which then developed into 3 terms that Rosie would have come to school. So from that, Dolly would have been in, or Rosie would have been in school then sort of all day, and there was a wee stable area and grass area ready for her to be stable then for the duration. So from that, at that time I was the special needs coordinator, and I worked with a lot of children on a one-to-one basis. Children who would have been on the autistic spectrum, children with behavioural difficulties, and children who were really struggling with their numeracy and literacy. But so Rosie played a part in this, very much so, and it was with one particular little boy, and it really stood out for me. It was a young boy in P1 who had English as an additional language. His English was very good, and when he came into school in P1, he was very chatty, very communicative, and there was lots of sort of understanding of where he was academically. However, there was a situation that happened at home, which then resulted in him becoming selective mute. So the primary school teacher at that time found it really hard to base where he was academically. So with regards to his reading, we sort of didn't have any understanding of where he was and gauging where he needs to be. So I had taken this little boy out one day to meet Rosie, and he took his reading book with Rosie, and he sat with Rosie and started to talk, and he was working with Rosie, going through his reading and finishing the book from beginning to end. So this became a weekly thing. And just sitting back and reflecting and watching, you could really see the significant difference Rosie had. It was giving him confidence. Rosie wasn't communicating back verbally. She was very patient and just listening and being there for this little boy. So this is something that regularly occurred within school, particularly with children who were on the autistic spectrum. And I was interested to find out more, like, what was this exactly? So I did a lot of research, and then came up with the term equine facilitated learning. So I sort of looked into different avenues for training, because even though I have my teaching degree and I have my teaching background and experience, and I have my experience with the donkeys as well, I needed something to knit the two together. So that sent me on a journey then to go and look for different avenues of training and qualifications within the field. And that led me to England then. And I went to do my training with Horsehaven, UK. And my principal at that time very kindly gave me the time off to go and do that. So that is what I did. So when I went to do the training, it just all fell into place. And I found it hard at the beginning to sort of articulate what EFL was, but I have put it into a few words here, and I'll just share it with you now. Equine facilitated learning is a type of support and a form of learning that uses both horses and donkeys to help develop participants' life skills and improve their mental health and well-being. It's based on the idea that horses and donkeys can teach people about themselves. It's inclusive to everyone, and all ages and abilities can access it. The beauty about EFL is there are no barriers. It's all about celebrating what they can do and not what they can't do. And that leads to self-motivation and the feel-good factor. Through interactions with both horses and donkeys, participants learn powerful new skills and develop exhibiting ones which can be transferable into their daily routines and into their daily lives, whether it be at school, home, work, family life, and relationships, to name a few. Now, the benefits of EFL are far-reaching. They are transformative for so many. It can be little tiny steps for some, and it can be massive steps for others. It can change participants from being anxious to becoming confident, and they can learn to relate and communicate better with themselves and others. The participants experience clarity in their lives, healing of emotions in a safe way, and these are transferable into all their everyday lives. The relationship between the donkeys and the participants triggers an increase of trust, and I think that is one of the main things within EFL, is building that trust and building that confidence, and that's transferable to people. It lowers their fears and anxiety and enhances their learning and empathy, not to themselves but towards others as well. The non-verbal communication between the participant and the donkey promotes quiet, calm, and peaceful time of self-reflection where the animal makes no judgment. So from that, it builds every day, and feedback from our participants makes it very humbling, and you feel very privileged to be a part of so many of people's journeys. Now, our program runs from the age of 4 right up into adulthood, and we have a lot of young groups here at the minute with children from special needs, and also with young adults and adults with complex needs. So there's a full range. So as I said earlier, there's no barrier at all. But it's so important that you know your animals and you know your participants as well, and that each program is based on your participant and their needs, and that you have a clear understanding of what those objectives are and what the participants want to gain from it. So I'm just going to give you a wee bit of feedback just from some of our participants, and there's one that just stands out to me in particular, and it's very simple. It's 3 words: Tilly chose me. So Tilly's one of my little donkeys that I use for EFL, and this particular participant was experiencing quite extreme bullying in school, and she really, really struggled with friendships, and therefore she had became through choice really a school refuser, and she found it so hard to take the step over the door into school because of friendships. She wanted to have friends. She didn't understand why they were picking on her. So when she met our group of donkeys, it's a gradual process that they're not integrated in with the donkeys first off. But when that part of the journey does happen, there were 5 little donkeys at the time, and this little girl went in, and Tilly, the donkey, just stepped right out from the herd and chose her. And that was just a profound moment for this little girl. So talking her through Tilly's behaviour and her interactions was giving her skills then to sort of transfer into her school life, which then helped her in 2 to 3 months' time then to start attending school on a morning basis. So that's just one example. I'll just give you a couple more. It's been such a positive experience. It's lovely to see Lucy engaging with the donkeys. I keep remembering when Petal the donkey was unsure, I showed her how to be strong by walking through the puddle first. So you can imagine how that participant felt, that there was problem solving in there. She had to work out why Petal wasn't going first, and that she had to take the lead. So there was leadership skills coming into place there, and obviously the thinking and problem solving skills as well. So I'll maybe just leave it at that, because I could go on. But it's just such an amazing area of work, and every day is different because your participants are different, and it's like everything, you have good days and bad days, and your animals have good days and bad days too, and it's being aware of that and having the knowledge of how to implement and design your programs that are beneficial for each and every participant.
Brilliant, and thank you so much. We're going to have, once the 3 guys have done a little presentation, then we're going to have plenty of time for questions and further kind of delving into what they're doing. So Amy, you're next on my screen there. Would you like to jump in and let us know a bit about what you're up to?
No problem.
Thanks.
I'll try and condense about 14 years into 10 minutes. I'll give you a whistle stop tour. So I began work in mental health as a family or carer advocate, specialising within personality disorders and serious mental ill health. That was around sort of 2010. And then after that, I began riding again and worked through my BHS qualifications. I used an equine assisted learning facilitator he no longer works in Northern Ireland, but at the time I'd become really interested in how this could work within people's recovery and family recovery from mental ill health. And so we done a bit of respite and a bit of work together. And that sort of grew into jointly delivering an equine assisted learning course and residential for young carers. So these would have been people whose maybe mothers or fathers would have been in and out of hospital at different stages on their journey. And that was funded by Children in Need. So then I spent 2 years, really kind of the guts of 2 years, obtaining my qualification in equine assisted learning from Equine Assisted Qualification in Dorset. I set up a small business with a heavy focus on community interest. This is when I was living in Oma. And that was really helped through funding with Invest NI, which helped sort of pay for different aspects of my training, because obviously it involved quite a lot of traveling over to England. So I delivered equine assisted learning then freelance through my prior business then, which was Journey NI, as I was coaching for the RDA in Oma. And I was able to, use the facilities and the horses that I would be working with every week. The referrals there were mainly from the Western Trust within personality disorder, because with my other work, I'd built up really good relationship with them. And I think they could just see the impact that it had on their clients. I worked with families, hubs, CAMs, and private clients. So after that, then I moved to Yorkshire, and just by chance began working with the Exmoor Pony Trust. This was on one of the Army reserves, the nature reserves, and I delivered sessions which had a real focus on pre-deployment and post-deployment for families in that really tough transitional time. I then moved back to Belfast, and then made links again with Grantia Equestrian, where I rode and had horses. I done more freelance there with a heavy focus on the mental health carers, youth justice, CAMs, and other agencies. Then I moved to Windsor and then began working with the Household Cavalry in their early training with new recruits. And some of these people, depending on where they came from, really wouldn't have had much contact around horses before. And they obviously had to really learn to understand them very quickly to pass all of their things they needed to pass. So gaining the sort of skills, working with them on the ground, just the awareness of them. So I done that for a short time, and then I moved back to Hollywood and continued doing freelance at Grantia, and also then developing a really good working relationship with Diane at Claddy Water. And we've done sessions for CAMs, AMS, and also home education, which I'm really passionate about as I home educate my 2 children. I think maybe just to say the sessions that I do have a heavy focus on transactional analysis and the drama triangle, emotional regulation, and interpersonal awareness. And that's all through the experiential learning that I think you can only get through equine assisted learning. So I think, looking at the kind of where moving forward from here within Northern Ireland, I think if the equine assisted training doesn't provide that sort of deeper level of communication and the transactional analysis, using, like in my training, just using really clean language, not bringing anything yourself that might impact on somebody's relationship with the horses, all of those dynamics. And I don't think, unless you have a real solid base in that, I don't know if the sessions are maybe just can be as at that transformative level. So I think it also, needs to be integrated as an option for aid and recovery from mental ill health. Most of the mental health teams that I work with as an advocate, and I was speaking at an international conference actually in Belfast a few months ago, which was within personality disorder. And a lot of the practitioners that I worked with, when I said this is what I do, they had no idea that this was happening. And, they had no idea that this was happening in Northern Ireland. So, or how you might, what that might look like. So, and I think even being sure that the terms that we're using are distinctive, and that we're not conflating, you know, sort of say pony or horse experience with equine assisted learning, and we're not, you know, conflating that with equine therapy, you know, all of those sort of things that will help within, you know, the standardizing of practice. You know, so yeah, just I suppose that's something to think about, you know, like going forward. I would love to see equine assisted learning as a, you know, a viable option for practitioners. I've worked with eating disorders team, personality disorders team, the Shannon Clinic, the Medium Secure Clinic. I would love to see it more embedded, so that, you know, because obviously the evidence base is there, like we know that it works. But obviously that's what the trusts will look at, you know, what are the standards, the accreditation. And I suppose even on that, you know, people like myself that maybe don't have the, you know, the same resources. I don't have my own, you know, EAL yard yet. You know, I tend to build really good relationships with other yards and do freelance. But even that is like, it's quite costly too. And, you know, it's not really that sustainable. So yeah, I suppose those are just some things to think about going forward, those kind of clear career pathways for people, you know, who are trained and they want to use these skills, but they don't have their own yard. Those are just some of the things that, from my own experience, that I would like to see some kind of solutions thought about, you know.
Yeah, and I remember I came out to see Amy like jeepers 3-4 years ago maybe now.
Yeah.
And I do remember, you know, naively at the time, just think of the facilities that you had in the space where you were practicing, you know, grants and stuff were incredible. But once we got into talking about the children and the didactic kind of family model that you were working with, that actually, you know, any sort of disturbance in the yard or, you know, all of that has such an impact before you even start the session, you know. And this, it is interesting to try and work with riding schools and equine facilities and still create this safe, quiet space to allow this work to kind of thrive. And I guess, Diane, I'm going to let you jump in here and explain where you are and a bit about Claddy Farm and how that probably delivers exactly that for people.
So yeah, I wasn't really sure what to say tonight or what to do. And the first person I would have rung to consult on that would have been Simone. And it was very, I went through a bit of a, this is when I would lift the phone and go, right, what the hell am I going to say here? What am I going to do? And she's not here. So yeah, me, where did I come from? Richard Moore spoke to me earlier and he said, I'm looking forward to hearing your life story. And I was like, geez, I didn't know I had to give him a life story. I thought I just had to say how I ended up playing with horses. So I'm a social worker. I have been a social worker for 24 years. Always worked in family and childcare, although when I went to uni to do social work, I said I was never going to work in family and childcare. And I've never worked anywhere else. Started off in field work, specialised in adolescents, worked in fostering, and always had a passion for residential, and that's where I am now. And I am currently deputy manager in North Road Children's Home, which is where I am at the minute. I'm up in my little den on the top floor. I told the kids all to be quiet because I have a very important meeting to do. And yeah, I say I'll be carried out of here. So yeah, this is my passion, and teenagers and looked after children. So as part of my job in 2018, I got a phone call from my boss to say that her child was in hospital and could I go to a conference tomorrow in the Donkey Sanctuary somewhere in Belfast. And I went, there's not a Donkey Sanctuary in Belfast, there's only one here. And it was up the road from me. So I went along and everybody thought I was there for Pony Club because I also teach Pony Club. And I was like, no, I actually have a day job as well. And from that, I really learned a lot about EAL, equine assisted activities, and was kind of like, geez, I didn't really know that a lot of this went on. It didn't, and it sparked an interest. I then met Jennifer Dixon Clegg. She did a seminar with BHS. And again, I went along because it was at Laurel View and it was handy. And I convinced work that I should go as my day job. So that was a winner. Did have to take a day's leave to do it. And from that, I met Lorraine Conlon in the department. and she got me hooked in, and very much told me about Festina Lente and qualifications and how you could do this. I have known Simone for years, and at that point I went and spoke to Simone, because Simone at that stage was on the Festina Lente course, and sort of spoke to Simone and went like, what do I need to do this? You know, if you were going to do this, what resources do you need? What ponies do you need? So she was so helpful, and really, I probably wouldn't have been here without her support over the lot of the years that I trained and have been setting up Claddywater. So I went to Festina Lente 2021 and came out of there. I was the only person from my course that started to practice, and that scared me a little bit, because I was kind of going, why is nobody else doing this? Why have you just spent thousands on a course that took you the gutsy 18 months and you're now like not doing anything with it?
Yeah.
So I'm married to a farmer, and anybody that knows sheep farmers and horses, like, horses are just the bane of their life. And I had to convince him that suddenly horses might make money, so let's do this. Let's have a go. So Claddywater Farm Equine Learning Centre, I couldn't come up with any fancy names. That's what it was called in its infancy, and that remains. And we started, we're not a big outfit, we're a working sheep farm. We do have 11 horses now. When I started in Festina Lente, I had 1. So we've grown in our equine numbers. And I did have a bit of a sort of, what is equine assisted learning? You know, while there's physical benefits to EAL, its focus is on the emotional and positive mental influence that spending time with horses has on your life. EAL is experiential, meaning that you learn by doing, and the horse is the facilitator, a living, breathing being who helps to direct your session, making it a combination of education, therapy, and fun. So I still do my day job as a manager in residential, and then on 2 days a week, I only work half days here, and I spend the afternoon, evenings doing sessions. So I see up to about 10 young people a week, mostly individual work, but I've done some group work with Simone, Newbank, and then also with Amy as well. So doing some work with them. Predominantly looked after children. That is my bread and butter. I suppose that's where my connections are. Although I don't get very many referrals from the Belfast Trust. It's mostly Northern and Southeastern Southern Trust. A lot of looked after children. I do some work with Tessa. So they would send me referrals from adoptive placements. A lot of neurodiversity, and I've recently taken a lot of referrals from adult learning disability as well. I have some private adults that would come self-funding for short periods of time, but predominantly looked after children. I am trained in therapeutic crisis intervention. I'm a trainer for the trust. I would do a lot of work with young people looking at their emotional regulation, how to regulate their own emotions, how to manage things, do a lot of life-based interview work in terms of learning from each incident and how they can grow and change their behaviour and do things better. I spoke to a foster carer this morning who said that the work that we have done, and I say we because it's me and the horses, with the young person in her placement who's 8, is phenomenal, and the placement wouldn't be still going if it wasn't for what I've done with them over the summer. So that's lovely to hear, you know, because I just think I'm just doing social work with horses, and, you know, kids, trying to get them to engage, you're always looking for that common third with them to try and engage them in dialogue about, and it can be something so trivial, you know, especially this time of year, getting them back into school, back into the routine. So, you know, I just have a different vehicle to do it. I just have a different toolkit when I'm at home. I have ponies, I have nice, calm, quiet atmosphere. There's probably not that many on the call that have been to Claddywater. You're all very welcome if anybody wants to come for a visit. But Amy will tell you, we're a very quiet, peaceful place. We're down a long lane, there's nobody really around. The biggest interruptions, a plane flying in. So even just the environment and the setup, and you know, I don't know how Amy does it in Grantia with lots of people peering over the fence and looking in, and you know, because when I started this, I contemplated doing it at Laurelview, and then I was like, no, that's never going to work. So yeah, I think the big thing for me, I have some kids who come to me and have been coming to me from I started and come for long periods of time. But there are also young people who come for 1 or 2, 3 sessions, and you even see a difference in that, in those very short time limited pieces of work. And sometimes that can be where they're at, or it can be funding that restricts how long that they can come. But I think it's very powerful work that, you know, and again, it's not me. I'm still blown away by some of the ways the horses respond to people and the things that they do, because I can't teach them to do that. You know, I don't train them to respond or to give them a wee nudge when they're upset, or, you know, I remember standing with a young person who I was working through a safety plan with her because she was actively suicidal. She was very emotional, very overwhelmed. The horse was at the far end of the arena, and something sparked him and he turned and trotted up, and as he came closer to her, he just stopped and just gave her a little nudge. And I can't teach a horse to do that. This is the horse in question. I did have a picture of him, because I also think what this work does for horses. So that guy is Storm, and for want of a better description, Storm was on death row. He was part of the riding school, and he had a hole in his windpipe and had laminitis. Joy will know Storm, I'm sure. I see she's on the call. And the vet was really saying, like, you know, unless you spend thousands of pounds operating, this guy is not going to make it. And he had been tried in the RDA, and he didn't like RDA because he kicked the sidewalkers. So he was due to go on to another world. And my daughter is incredibly attached to him. And she said, please don't do anything this week. Give me 2 weeks to work on my daddy, and I want to take him home. So she worked on her daddy. It took 5 days. And Storm came to live with us to die a natural, peaceful death. That was over 2 years ago. And Storm does a lot of EAL work. He's amazing because he's really grumpy and he's really stubborn, and he just gives amazing feedback. So, do you know, if it wasn't for us doing that, where would Storm be now? So I think, you know, it does a lot of good for the horses as much as it does for the people. The vet was out last summer, and Sarah said, do you know who that is? He was like, how is he still living? And my husband said, yes, I'd like you to tell me that. He's taken up a stable. So yeah, and I suppose I was thinking of some of the ways that a lot of the work I do, because it's looked after children and it's foster kids, residential and adoption, a lot of it, social workers look for support when placements are at breaking point and things are tentative. Foster placements are like hen's teeth in Northern Ireland now. We don't have enough of them. Residential's great, but no child is going to fulfill their potential in residential. It's just not conducive to that. And I say that sitting on the top floor of a children's home. It's just not a good environment when you put all those kids together in a mix. So if we can keep them in families, it's better. So I do a lot of work, and it's just how it has evolved with foster carers and young people where placements are at breaking point, and trying to turn that around and trying to keep the foster carers motivated and keep the child in the placement, and see what supports we can put in place and how we can turn things around and how we can change it. And the horses are amazing at that. You know, even simple tasks like mucking out a stable and making it nice for the horse coming in, and thinking, you know, because many teenagers have problems with tidying their bedrooms, 2 teenagers. So, you know, I know firsthand. So, you know, even simple tasks like that. And when I started out, I had like, because I came from Festina, I had like my lesson plan and my session and what was, and I had my piece of paper in my pocket. And I suppose, having done 20 odd years in social work, I quickly was able to move away from that. And I was quickly able to, and I'm going to say again, I often rang Simone after a session and went, I was just doing it, and I just come up with this idea, and it just worked, and I would be like, wow, this is really cool. 3 years in, I'm a bit more natural at it, and I don't have to do as much planning, and I can just I'm not wing it, I suppose, but yeah, I'm more fluid in how I can run a session and respond to things. I feel like I'm blabbering now. I suppose I was thinking too in terms of the regulation of it. I joined the HEDI register, both for the UK and Ireland. I'm also a member of the British Association of Social Workers, and I'm also a member of ACCPH, a senior member there. So trying to put some kind of regulation around it so that when health trusts and private families are looking to see, you know, who am I giving my money to, what regulation are they, I have to say no one has ever asked to see any documentation to say, are you qualified, are you registered, do you have an access NI, do you have anything. They just seem to trust that you are. Now maybe that's a social worker in me, that when I send kids to outside agencies, I'd be like, can we see a copy of that? Can we know that? And where are you regulated? And so I suppose there is just, you know, and I remember Richard saying it many years ago when I first heard him speaking about this, you know, how many people had a donkey in their back garden and thought they could start to do this, and there needed to be some, and it's what Amy was saying too, there needs to be some training and regulation around it, that you are doing good and you are doing something well. So yeah, I did have some lovely pictures of my little tribe.
But Diane, if you email that through to Ashley now,
I know I tried to email it to Ashley, but I think it wouldn't go. But I'm wondering, is it because I'm emailing it from the trust? Because sometimes they don't like things being sent out externally. But yeah, that's a very whistle-stop tour of what I do and how I got to be where I am. I suppose in terms of resources, Claddy Water's a small working farm. We have an arena, and we have I now have a cabin. We don't call it the Porta cabin. I've shortened it to cabin because I thought that was nicer. But we have now a space where we can meet and greet people, where we can do a bit of group work, do a bit of feedback afterwards, make a cup of coffee if somebody's emotional. I have a small indoor space that when sheep aren't lambing, I'm allowed access to. And I suppose, yeah, it's quite, my daughter plays mounted games, so I use a lot of games and fun and obstacles, and I work a lot with my miniature ponies, and they love all that kind of stuff. D&D probably does the most work in the yard, because she is unflappable, so she's a great one to start with until you see what the young person's like. And that's what I think somebody said it before, you need to know your animals and you need to know what you're working with, and you know which one is the best to work with today, and they'll have an off day as well, as much as we have. I find one of the struggles I find is because I only do it 2 days a week and I try to cram a lot of them in back to back, I want to try and give the last person on a Monday evening as good a session as the first person on Monday afternoon. And it's how you keep that motivation in yourself and you keep that buzz and that energy just right through the day. Because I know Simone and I used to talk a lot about, you know, because she would have spread hers out over the week, and I'd be talking to her and saying, like, I have to go, it's another one in 5 minutes, I'm just swapping ponies here and running about, and she's like, oh, I don't know how you do it back to back, but it's the only way I can fit it in at the minute. And yeah, I love it. I look forward to being able to retire from this and do it full time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Diane. I mean, what has really come across from all three of you is just how, and it's actually a discussion. We were talking to a professor from Cambridge University this morning. He's writing a really interesting book on how horses are no longer involved in society, and how do we ensure that that horse-human connection isn't lost. And I was trying to sort of articulate how equine assisted learning in particular with the practitioner, it's, you know, you don't, as you were saying, Diane, and you know, Anne and Amy referred to as well, you know, you don't have strict ideas around each lesson, and you cannot, you know, make the donkeys or the horses respond in a certain way. But what the three of you bring such a breadth of knowledge from your previous careers. Well, you're still, you know, still have those careers as well, but to interpret what that either donkey or horse is trying to do, why it's doing it, and why that is relevant and needed and appropriate for the client who's in the, you know, the space at the time. And it's, I do feel that, I mean, certainly you, Diane, seem to be working at the very much the intervention kind of stage, and I just feel from, you know, the work that you're all delivering, and Anne, I think you're probably in much more of this space where you're doing this full time with a larger number of people, and you're able to maybe look at the preventative kind of space as well, so you're giving people these skills so that they don't reach that intervention point too. Now I'm actually, normally I would maybe chuck a few questions in here. I'm conscious of time, so I'm gonna open it up to the floor and let you guys ask your questions first of all. Oh, someone's hand up there. Aisling, can you field the questions? Is that cool? And
yes, the first question we have is Ruth.
Okay, Ruth, there you go.
Hi, thank you very much, everybody. And 3 amazing life stories, really amazing. I just want to ask, particularly Diane, because you mentioned a number of referrals from the different trusts. I'm just interested, roughly, the numbers of referrals that you get from HSC trusts. That's the first question, and Anne and Amy as well. If you get referrals from trusts, I'm just interested in that general ballpark. And the second thing you mentioned, registration. What about insurance? What do you do about insurance?
Yeah, do you know, the part of the job I hate in residential is that I have to put weekly stats up. And when I started to think about what I was going to say here tonight, I was like, I really should collate stats on EAL. I would say, on a rough estimate, probably 80 to 90% of the kids that I see are health trust referred. And they come, I normally run it on 6-week blocks, and we run for 6 weeks and review it. And I have one young person who's been coming to me for the last 3 years, and I have other young people who come for 6-week block, and that's what they do, and they go on. So in terms of numbers, predominantly most of my referrals come through the health service. Some through education, and some then maybe start with particularly a lot of adoptive placements come through TESA. And they maybe get 6 to 8 sessions funded, and some adoptive families, I would get a lot of families from the sort of South Antrim area. Temple Patrick's quite an affluent area, and some of those families can afford to then pay for it themselves, so they see the benefit out of it from getting some funded sessions, and then maybe continue to fund some privately themselves. But predominantly the majority of my referrals come through the health service. In terms of insurance, you're talking to, I was nicknamed Little Miss BHS in Festina Lente because I kept spotting all the risks and all the, safety things. I have my own insurance through SEIB. Most of the big equestrian insurance providers will take you on for EAL. So that's who my insurance is through. And again, it was Simone that recommended to go with them, and that's who she was insured with, and I followed suit. She had said she'd had a number of incidents through the riding school over the years, and they were always easy to deal with. And they actually at the time did my horse vet insurance. So I have a private policy just for the equine assisted learning. And I'm a sole trader. I don't employ anybody to do it. So when the likes of Amy or Simone and I are working together, we're working as 2 independent practitioners delivering a service together.
Fantastic.
So I'm not employing them, so to speak.
So you said 80 to 90% of your clientele are from the trusts. Is that what you said?
I would say so off the top of my head.
Can you translate that into referrals per week or referrals per month, roughly?
I have had a constant waiting list for the last 2 years. I have about 6 kids on my waiting list at the minute. So wow. Yeah, and there's periods of time you don't get any referrals for a lot of weeks, and then you get spaces. And but no, I have a constant waiting list, but I only have 10 sessions a week to offer. So and I only offer them on a Monday and a Thursday afternoon, because, well, from lunchtime Monday through to 7 o'clock, and then I offer one on a Thursday morning, which is a long-standing one for a child that the school released her to come to me, because they actually say that the Thursday when she comes to school, having been to me first, is the best day of the week. So,
you're busy. Thank you.
Yeah, and my children compete at the weekends, so I don't offer any sessions at the weekends. I could fill a whole Saturday probably if I wanted. But yeah. So far, from I started, I've never been hunting, and that's probably why I'm really wicked at publicising what I do and putting it on Facebook. Partly too because a lot of the kids I work with are looked after, and there isn't consent to photography and that kind of thing. But I'm a bit wicked at advertising it and putting it out there. Simone was always brilliant at putting little posts on Facebook and examples and photographs and things that she was doing. And I suppose I haven't needed to really advertise at this stage. there may come a point when I'm sitting going, I don't have any referrals, so you know what I do. But yeah, I am nicknamed the crazy horse lady in Temple Patrick.
Really? Anne, you've quite a large number from the trust as well, don't you? Well, I mean, I was out at your place the other week, and you listed off a wide number of places that you get your referrals from as well.
Yeah, so I was just trying to work out there. 40% of our referrals would be from health and social trusts, and that's across the board. 30% would be a lot of special needs schools and behavioural units. And then the sort of additional 20%, 10%, 20% would be mental health charities, a range of different groups like Youth Justice, Adopt NI, looked after children. It's a range really. It sort of changes from time to time. And then we also do have from that there a sort of a lot of one-to-one sort of private referrals. We currently have been doing day opportunities with disability groups, and that's been a big thing. So so currently I have 2 people working for me at the minute, and the waiting list for us would be 6 months currently. So our diary is pretty much booked up with groups up until Easter time. So we're actually looking to introduce an additional yard here at the farm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we don't really advertise. It's really been word of mouth, and it's been people who have been taking part in the program. They can see, you know, their key workers, the social workers, the psychologists. They can see the benefits. It speaks for itself. And as I say, you know, we have basically like a central program, but it's each participant, their program is for them. So all their objectives and everything's in place for them with their sort of agreement and input as well. So our programs vary depending on the participant. So from that, you know, the outcome of them, when they finish after the 10 weeks, you know, the word sort of spreads then, you know, from place to place. So that's what we have found. I mean, when I was going into it about sort of 10 years ago, it really started with Donkey Club. Donkey Club, as I said before, sort of ran from school. And then it was a couple of parents that said to me at the time, look, would you not think of maybe running Donkey Club at home? And I had sort of mixed feelings about it. And I thought, oh, do you know something? I'll try it and see. And that is really where it started. And that was 10 years ago. And when I look back now, I never would have dreamt to think that I am where I am today. So our insurance too is through NFU. So we live on a farm here, and we have our separate EFL insurance. So there was quite a lot of policies to put into place for that, and NFU now are taking on EFL as an insurance, and they've used a lot of our policies that we have put together for EFL then for other users then to be able to use and be able to gain.
Good. Thank you. And sorry, someone's popped up there with, I think, want to talk to Amy about OMA referrals. Is that right? If I picked that up correctly.
Oh, right. Sorry, I've missed that.
You're okay. Who put that in let me just see the chat. Have you got that?
Joan?
Joan, it is.
Yeah, Joan, are you there?
Hi, yeah. Hi, Tori. Thanks very much. And Diane and Anne, your chats are amazing to hear all the experience that you have now working with the different clientele and people. Yeah, I'm also involved in the RDA in Enniskillen, and I had spoken with Gwen about working on a Thursday in OMA because they would be free. So I'd be interested in chatting to Tori a little bit more.
I'm using my sister's computer, so she's Tori, I'm Amy.
Oh, sorry.
Just to confuse things.
I was looking at Anne. You see, when you were talking about Amy, I thought you were talking about Anne.
Oh, sorry, no.
Yeah.
It's just okay. So yeah, so I'd be interested in touching base with you.
Yeah.
I've been speaking to Gwen and that. So
yeah. Well, yeah. So when we moved to OMA, and I'm just trying to remember how long ago. I mean, it's probably about what would it be, about like a decade ago. But yeah, the centre itself, I mean, I really like doing sessions there, because I think whenever you were coaching and you were spending all of that time with the horses, it had a really different feel to using a riding school. It was a lot, you know, less busy. I think with OMA now, I think it's all changed now in terms of layout, but the layout was great. I mean, I remember there was one girl who came for sessions and she wasn't even allowed to sit. I mean, it was just wild. She basically, there had to be a barrier in the car between her and staff when she came to the sessions. And she just did not feel, I think, you know, safe. And whenever she came into sessions, I think this is where it's really important to work with the person and their unique needs. She did not want staff involved in her session. She didn't want them looking at her session, and that was absolutely fine by me. They had a bit of an issue with it, because I think they thought for my safety, but I quickly realized that this was not about myself or the horses. She actually felt very, very safe. And but the gallery, the layout was really perfect because they could watch the session, but they were away from it. That was really important to her. And I think, you know, it's all people wherever I move to, due to the nature of our family move every couple of years. And so you kind of, you know, make inroads and relationships with people. And, you know, I think EAL word quickly gets out that it actually really cuts to the heart of things very quickly, as opposed to in the room counselling with people. And, you know, so you don't really have to do a lot of advertising. If somebody in the team has referred somebody, you know, usually they'll be quick to say, wow, it really does help. You know, I don't know if that helps at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a young adult from learning disability who comes to me weekly, and she comes in a vehicle similar to what Amy's describing, with a perspex shield so she can't interfere with the driver, and 3 staff bring her to me, and they potter about, go and get a cup of coffee, and they leave me and her and the ponies in the arena to get on with it. And there hasn't been an issue at all. And this is a young adult, she's 27, who didn't leave her flat, who didn't do anything, and this is the first thing that has motivated her. She has very limited mobility, and she started off working with one of our little miniature horses who's just about 33 inches, and I the other day thought I would maybe step it up, and I introduced her to one of our older ponies who's 13-1, and she was like, he's massive. No, I can't, he's too big. And I was like, he's not even big. But it's perception. So she's just fallen in love with Dainty, and Dainty's who she wants to work with, and she talks about Dainty all week, and I can't wait to come back to see Dainty and put a young person in a different environment and a different atmosphere, and I'm able to have challenging conversations with her that the staff in her accommodation can't, because it flares up into an argument. But standing in an arena with Dainty, and we're able to address so much, and we've gone through lots of different things that nobody could ever broach with her, because we're in a different scenario. So that's what I go back to. I'm not doing anything that those other staff haven't tried to do. I've just got a different environment and a different toolkit to do it with.
Yeah. I suppose the part of the question was as well about the Western Trust or the referrals. You know, how do we, like, I'm not involved in, okay, I would know social workers, but what's the route to work? You know, is it that you just put an application in, or you contact different services and just say that that's available? You know, that's a question.
Are you talking about as a practitioner getting referrals? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I suppose what Amy we would have had connections in the trusts, and I suppose because I work in the trust as well. My initial referrals came through the Happy Healthy Minds pilot and a local school. And that's, I suppose, what kick-started. That was my first sort of batch of referrals. There was a pot of money there and a local school funded. And that gave me some work then to publicise. And I suppose then, yeah, it's like what somebody else has said. If somebody has referred in, I mean, there's a psychologist in the Northern Trust who's blown away by this. And she's part of this, so they would have a TT-LAC, which is their therapeutic network for looked after children. So I would have attended those meetings for one of the young people I was working with. And I suppose that's something I do over and above the sessions. But I would have joined on to those meetings just to have a bit more background about the young person I was working with. So she learned a lot about what I was doing with them. And again, it was a young person with learning disability who nobody could engage, nobody could get to talk to. And I was the first person that she would engage with. So in talking through the work I was doing with her, that psychologist is now recommending this as an intervention for lots of other kids that they're working with. So it is really word of mouth, probably your biggest way of getting in there.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. It is pretty much word of mouth, and it's making connections as well. It's really getting out there and you know, talking about what you do, why you do it, and the benefits from that. And I think too, when you come from a sort of background where you are qualified within a certain area, whether it's be psychology, counsel work, social work, educational work. You know, I encourage people to ask me for my qualifications as well, you know, to ensure that they know that they're coming to a place that is regulated and is being assessed by the relevant parties.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, guys. I'm Joy. You've got your hand up there. Sorry, what can we help you with?
You're on mute, Joy.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry about that. Technology is not my strong point. Amazing to hear everybody's stories and how you came to be doing what you're doing and doing some amazing work as well. Just a practical sort of question, really. In the sessions, how do you work with one pony, one donkey, or do you work with groups of them, or how do you decide? Is it one-on-one or several ponies at once?
I would say it's different. I think sometimes I would use multiple horses with one person. Sometimes I'd be working with a family and just use one. I think it can really help sometimes. I mean, I remember, I think it was actually maybe down in Oma, and it was lovely to be able to give the participant the choice of who to work with. That was really nice as well. And actually, it was really interesting because I remember one of the participants who would have had very sort of risky behaviours outside of the sessions and things. And actually, she always picked one of the more sort of blunt, feistier kind of horses. And actually that made for really interesting conversations about dynamics and, you know, where you put yourself and what situations you put yourself in and different things. That was lovely. But and then sometimes it's nice for to work with, say, two horses with a group. I do think it just depends. I mean, I like to have a bit of a skeleton idea. So if the referrer has maybe said, like, there's these things are the issues, you know, it could be boundaries, communication. Well, if I'm doing something around boundaries, I might need to have more than one, or we might need to look at, so we do like, feeding kind of techniques, which is really useful. And what are the horses' boundaries? How can you tell when they're uncomfortable? And, so I think it just depends, really.
Yeah, and lots of questions. Do you include parents and carers in the sessions, or is it if you're working with a child or an adult, whatever, is the family involved, or are they there on their own? I mean, like in the arena. I'm just thinking.
I think from the outset, I can only speak for myself, but from the outset, so say when I was doing a lot of the sessions with CAMS, and that was specifically with the family and the young person, and this was meant to aid their communication and those interpersonal skills and things like that. If somebody makes a referral and it's a one-to-one, no matter whether that's a young person or an adult, and their family comes with them, it's clear from the outset that this is their session and that they won't be in the session. But you can book a family session if it's something that you wanted to do together. So I think it is actually really important to be clear on those boundaries beforehand. I think it's really helpful.
Third question.
I would bring families, particularly a lot of the work I'm doing is around placements and carers and that. So I would allow some time at the end just to kind of agree. I mean, there are boundaries of what they can, it's their session, and it's not to go out and tell the carer word by word what everything, but sometimes we'd have some agreements as to what we're going to do, or some goals for the week or something like that, and maybe share that with the carer, or you know. So that was why I told my husband I needed to put up a cabin, because I needed somewhere to have these conversations.
Yeah. Last part. Do you take notes of your sessions? Do you make records, or is that something you're not? I know as a physio, I kind of part of your governance, you have to document everything, and sometimes it feels a bit too much. But I just wondered, just out of interest.
Do you want to
make a very brief note. It's not a requirement of any of the bodies that I'm registered with to hold any records of sessions. My head is, some of my staff describe my head as a computer with about 85 tabs open. So there's a lot happens in a week. So I make a very brief scribble of a few bullet points, and it's more to jog my memory so that when they come back next week, I can go, and I remember you told me, or, you know, so and so, because they'll tell me something and I'll be like, flip, it's goes out my head, and I go, you told me something about a brother, but I can't remember what your brother's called, and that's really wick for kids, because that looks like you don't care and you don't, it's not important to you. So those kind of key facts that I'm likely to forget, I would jot down a few notes, but I don't keep records of sessions per se. It's one of the nice sides of this work is that I don't have loads and loads of records to write up, but I would, for my own benefit, just make a few notes to kind of remind me to rejig my memory the following week. And some of my kids come fortnightly, so that's even worse, because that's like eternity in my head.
And do you want to jump in there if you got, because I know you've done like specific kind of outcome measurements and different things, I think.
Yes, for some of the individuals that I would work with, I would have a sort of a plan in place with sort of the objectives, and the individual would work with me on that, on the objectives of what they want to achieve. So during the 6 to 10 weeks then, once that sort of the session is finished, over if it is 6 to 10 weeks, then I would have an evaluation to ensure that the objectives that we have in place have been met, or if there's been any sort of outcome from that, and that's fed back into the trust. Now, some of the trust work that we do, they ask for that because it goes part of that individual's file. But the evaluation is actually very good, because not only do I do it, but the participant does it as well, which is lovely. And then you get feedback from them also, which sort of forms then sort of the next program, because very often when an individual has taken part within our program, then they are coming back then to extend it. So then we look to see how we go forward.
Yeah, I have written reports for the social workers, just sort of an overview of what they've done and kind of, you know, progress that they've made and things that we've achieved in the time. I would do that, but again, it's not done forever. It's really only if they ask for it, and a lot of it is to secure funding. A lot of it is senior management want to see something to say what are they doing, how they progress, and how they engage in to justify continuing to fund it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much, guys. I'm super conscious. We've usually kept these to about 45 minutes, but this has been far too important to cut this short.
I think we do have one more question if we can just squeeze it in.
Yeah, hit us up.
So it's Ruth again, and she just asked, does anyone provide EAL primarily for carers?
Yeah. So I think I would say about 70% of my work over the past decade has been with mental health carers, and that's with cause. And that is primarily because I would have that's who I would have done advocacy for. So there was a relationship there that where they knew what I was offering with the equine side of things as well. And then that would have been adult mental health and also then CAM. So I would have done family sessions then with the carers of young people who were in Beechcroft, which is the inpatient unit in Belfast. So I'd say like a lot of my work would have been primarily with carers, and that's I think where the skills base lie. But I'm moving again in a few weeks over to England for another couple of years. So unfortunately, there has been lots of referrals recently that I've had to pass on to Diane. I don't know whether that answers the question, but
I have to say it's quite a lonely job. I suppose as a social worker, and particularly in residential, I've always been used working as part of a team. So I was very excited when Amy and I joined forces and delivered some programs together, because it was so lovely to have somebody else there. And her and I work very similarly and similar ways of working together, and we just seemed it just worked. And Simone was the same. So it is lovely to collaborate and do some stuff together, because it can be quite lonely and you start to wonder, you know, and I already miss Simone for ringing and saying, what do you do? You know, I had an adult contact me who wants to come for a number of sessions, and you know, even I was talking to her about what she would do, and we'll maybe do some grooming, and she just responded with, well, I would find that really boring. And she left this morning, and again I went, see, normally I would just lift the phone and ring Simone and go, what do you think? Give me some ideas. What would we do? So it is, you know, it is good to make connections with other practitioners. And that was one of the things Simone was really keen to do, was to have more interface with each other, and maybe even workshop days where you could share ideas, you know, because what I do in a session will be totally different to what Anne or Amy do in a session, and the different equipment, you know. I've got a trailer full of games equipment. So with a lot of the kids, I'm constantly doing lots of games and obstacles and building things. And so, you know, but somebody else might be doing something completely different. And it's great to share ideas. I know that was something that Simone was always keen to get off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was Simone really pushing us in the background, you know, that got the idea of the kind of the workshops that we have done in person, you know, off the ground so far, but we have so much more to do. But it's actually just wonderful how far people have come in terms of the idea of collaborating and sharing, and you know, actually this is all for the greater good around equine assisted services, you know. And I think we can say it's probably unique to Northern Ireland that we've got that kind of willingness between all the practitioners, and it needs to be celebrated and used, and you know, it's for the benefit of everyone really. And it's our job to try and bring everyone together and to ensure that that collaboration produces the best possible results for everyone. So if we need a poke, Simone was always very good at giving us one. So anybody else that wants to step into that space is more than welcome. I'm conscious Richard is on the call. He sort of looks like he's maybe in a cellar underground there. I'm not entirely sure. But just to finish up, Richard, do you have anything you want to add at the end here? Or
yeah, please, Molly. Can you all hear me? I'm standing.
We can, yeah, we can.
Yeah.
No, it's just my reflection on this is that I'm the layperson on the call very much. Obviously, there's a lot of experience here, but the people I've met on this journey that have impressed me the most have always been the people that are most willing to share and to learn. And so, you know, Simone was top of the list of that, as far as I'm concerned, in many cases. So, you know, I've met people on this journey who are quick to criticize others, who are who are quick to sort of put themselves on a pedestal, and then you meet the people who want to learn, want to share, want to make it better for everybody else, and they stand apart. And the three of you tonight have I think done Simone's memory very worthy, and thank you for making that effort. Thanks to Molly for organising it. But many times my chin was in the deck when I thought it wasn't worth running one equine or start some of this initiative. And Simone was the one who would have lifted you up quicker than anybody else. So excuse the emotion, but she's a big loss to the industry. But I think her legacy is more than testimony to what she's achieved. So thanks for the opportunity, and thank you, the three of you, for doing what you've done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Super. And yeah, thanks again to the three of you and to everybody for joining the call this evening. And yeah, we'll just keep pushing forward and keep everybody talking. And we do still have our practitioners network actually, which is open on Teams, and we'll get Ashton to send that link round, maybe with the recording of the webinar. And like, just to know that we're here to be kind of as much of a vehicle to help you guys as possible. So please do, any questions, any suggestions, anything that you have, do email it through. We're here to listen to that. And well, Ashton is on a day-to-day basis. The rest of us join in when we can. But yeah, look, thank you all so much. And yeah, we look forward to kind of pushing forward with all of this. All right.
Thank you
very much, guys. Cheers. Good
Yeah,
night.
and just to say, if anybody's wanting to start out on it and wants to visit, I'm open to, because that's what Simone did for me when I was starting out, was well, I'd been to her yard, but with a different lens on and thinking and helping. So the only way we're going to build this is to keep helping each other, and there's enough work out there for everybody. So like, I'm very open to anybody that wants to hook in and see what we do and compare notes.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Diane.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, guys.
you.
All right, good night. Bye.
Good night, everyone.